Welcome to State of Unity podcast, where we talk with people who used to live the ordinary and are now living in the extraordinary. On today's episode, we speak with Tony Selvaggio of E-Smart Recycling. Tony came to the U.S. on a work visa in 2010, eventually stumbling into a mind-blowing need he couldn't believe existed in one of the richest and most developed countries in the world. I, as any of my former roommates can attest, am quite a psycho when it comes to recycling. Very passionate about it, and especially when it comes to tech stuff, which is not something that's biodegradable, something that usually still works when it's thrown away. I am just captivated by your business model and what you're doing to help out the Tampa Bay area and also just abroad. So if you want to, I guess, just dive in and share a little bit about yourself, your story, wherever you'd like to start. I know there's a lot there.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. So let's see. I was born and raised in Venezuela, and I lived there until I graduated right after I was finishing college. So I moved to the United States in April 10 of 2011. I just turned 10 years of being here.
Okay.
And, coming from a scrap metal background, that's kind of what I did right out of college over there. And so when I was back in Venezuela, I learned, scrap metal. That was kind of, I started learning what recycling was in scrap metal.
So what does that mean? You started learning scrap metal?
So here's the thing. If you can sort trash, you can sell it, right?
Okay.
And that is a very eye-opening statement, because when you start looking at everything that's around you and you learn the ropes and you learn the industry, you don't see an aluminum can anymore, right? You stop seeing an aluminum can. You start seeing this commodity that you can get, depending on the aluminum market, you can get 50 to 80 cents per pound on, right? So immediately your head goes like, wait a minute, if I can consolidate, 20 of these, then I have, almost $1. And what we would do over there was that we would buy, you know, aluminum cans from smaller people, and then we would prepare a full container load that had 45,000 pounds of crushed and baled aluminum cans, and we would sell it for 75, 80 cents a pound. So we would sell a full truckload for $35,000, $40,000, right, of
Wow.
aluminum cans. So then it changes the way you look at things. The company that I was working with at that time was one of the largest exporters of what we call non-ferrous metals, which is things that are not steel related, like copper, wire, aluminum, stainless steel, all of those type of things. And we would export them to places like, Asia, Korea, Turkey, China. And, that's kind of how I learned what really recycling was. That's they say that if you get sort of bitten by the recycling bug, you either get it or you totally or you're totally out of it. And I definitely got it, and I understood the value of it. So, I mean, fast forward, I came here, um, without kind of boring you with the little details of how I came about, E-Smart Recycling. My story as an immigrant was a very typical story. I came here without knowing a single person. I didn't even know where Tampa was in the map, right? They said, okay, you're moving to Tampa. I had been to Florida. I knew Miami. I knew Orlando, your usual suspects, but I had never really, visited Tampa. And so imagine I was 24 at that time, 23, 24. It was the first time away from home. It was the first time away from family, from everything that I knew. And I come to a place where I don't know a single person. like with like $350 in my pocket. I didn't have anything. Um, but I had a job, which was great. You know, a very low paying job. The the bare minimum to qualify for a work visa, because that's what I came with a work visa, and I knew English pretty well. And I'm a faith driven person, so I had that was supporting me. I had the support of my mom and dad that were still back home, and I'm like, okay, great. In my head, I said I'm gonna be here for 6 years, which is kind of your visa, your work visa period, and then I'm just make a little money, go home, and that would be it. But but I didn't. So I got hired. I worked for this company for about a year and a half. Ironically, the guy that sponsored my visa had his investor visa denied. So he sponsored my work visa, but his investor visa got denied. So at that point, I got rehired by another company. Super like serendipitous story. I had friends of mine at that time that were graduating from USF and University of Tampa with like master's degree, trying to find a company that would sponsor their visa. They couldn't, and then this company just like offered me a re-sponsorship, because I don't know if you know about how work visas are set up. You can't just go work for another company. They have to do a re-sponsorship of the visa. Very intricate process, very expensive process.
Expensive for you or expensive for the company, or
Uh,
both?
or both, right? The first time I paid for that, and it was like $7,000 just
Oh,
to get
wow.
that work visa. The
Wow.
second time, ironically, the company just footed the bill. They were like, "Yeah, no worries, our attorneys will take care of it," and I was like, mind blown. Um, so
Don't mess us up, right?
I know, but then I did it, and then I messed it up. Well, I didn't mess it up, but I worked for this company for about a year and a half, and I had this itch that I really want to start my own thing. And in 2014, I presented my resignation, and I just went and started like E-Smart Recycling. Yeah.
So it sounds like when you were in Venezuela, you had a bit of a entrepreneurial mindset given the business that you were doing there, but it doesn't sound like that's something that you necessarily aspired to. Is that?
So kind of the thing is that when you especially from Latin America, right? The only path to wealth is entrepreneurship. You don't have job security, you don't have
Mm,
social security, you don't have 401k retirement plans. That I mean, in the majority of the countries from Central South America, the Caribbean, that way of life just doesn't exist.
mm,
So the only way where you can sort of build a platform for yourself and for your family and for future generations is through entrepreneurship, through being your own boss. And most of my friends had, this guy had a mechanic, shop. This other friend parents had like a bakery and a restaurant. My mom had an English academy, and that's kind of how I learned English since I was a little kid. So
mm.
everyone was doing their own thing. So I always knew that I never knew the difference between what it's a business owner, what's an entrepreneur, what's hustling just to make a living, what's really
Sure. It was all
creating a
kind of
long,
the same.
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what when I started E-Smart Recycling, that's kind of what I learned, was to have that larger vision of what business and impact is really like.
That's interesting. It's very different from growing up in the US, to say the least.
Completely different. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. But it's a cultural thing, so it's nothing,
Yeah.
for or against. It's just the way that,
Yeah.
it's.
So can you share then a little bit about the eSmart Recycling business model and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So when I started the company, it was because of my background, it was very scrap metal oriented. And obviously I couldn't start the way that I wanted to start. So I wanted to open a scrapyard. That's what I wanted to do, like a very nice scrapyard. I couldn't do that, obviously, because of the amount of capital. So at that point, computers were kind of a trendy topic. Fastest growing municipal waste stream, representing like 70% of all the toxic waste that's in the landfills. So it's like incredibly, bad for the environment. Um, and I asked a friend of mine that was sort of in the industry, and I'm like, how did you start? And he's like, well, you just go to places and present yourself and say, hey, if you have old computers that you want to recycle, just, let us know that we can recycle them for you. And I started looking at the process, and I'm realizing, well, I mean, I can do that because I mean, it's scrap metal at the end of the day. Once you sort it, again, if you sort it, you can sell it. So I go very early on to this networking meeting from this group of the chamber, and I'm like, hey, if you have old computers, let us know. We can recycle them for you. This company was upgrading like 20 computers. They had just upgraded them, and this lady from the company approaches me and is like, "This is perfect timing. We have like 20 computers in our office. Like, we hate it. We don't know what to do with them. Can you come pick them up?" I'm like, yeah, for sure. Go pick them up. And I realized that they're pretty good computers. They're fairly new computers. I'm not a techie. I don't know anything about computers, but I come from a country where you keep that computer for 20 freaking years, right? Because you don't just change computers, you keep upgrading the damn computer until it's literally way too old and you can't do anything with it. So I'm looking at these computers and I'm like, wow, these are fairly good computers. So I take them to a little office trailer that I had, um, and I keep it them. I keep the computers there. And like the next week, I go to this other networking event in a very similar situation, but then this other person from a nonprofit approaches me and they're like, you know what? We have this nonprofit. We serve kids through this after school program, and we don't have any computers. We serve about 300 kids a year, and we just have like two computers.
Wow.
And they're like, can we buy some affordable computers from you? Because we imagine that you probably have access to computers. And
Wow.
I'm listening to this story and I'm like completely mind blown about the fact that this organization that's helping kids that is here in the United States and the best country in the world has that challenge in infrastructure and doesn't have something as basic as a computer for their kids. And I couldn't believe that they were like, I don't know, like 10 or 15 minutes away from this other company that I just picked up 20 computers from. So like my mind couldn't like understand that. So
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, I don't have the heart to sell you computers because I just hurt your mission and I think it's pretty awesome. So I'm not going to sell you computers. But we just picked up, these computers and we might be able to give you some computers, because we have them. In my head, I'm like, I have them. And it's like, they're in my trailer. Why wouldn't I give it to this organization? So I asked this company, I told them a little bit of the story and they were super stoked about what I wanted to do. And we ended up giving them about 10 computers. I had a friend of mine refurbish them and put like a new hard drive and a new operating system and give it to these guys. And then we kept 10 computers for ourselves to sell and to make money and to pay for the refurbishing costs and to have a little bit of surplus, to have a profitable business.
Sure.
And to be able to create that win-win-win using my business as a mechanism to accomplish that, I it was incredible for me. So I became obsessed with the idea of how businesses can be used as a force for social good without knowing what social enterprise was at that time. Like I hadn't even heard the
Yeah.
term social entrepreneurship.
What year was this?
It was 2014, 2015.
Okay. Okay.
And so we created that. One thing kind of led to another. We started getting a lot of media attention. We were featured in a lot of newspapers and blogs and TV segments, and so we had like instant third party validation. And from that point on, it's been our mission kind of solidified. Like we want to be the computer and IT recycling vendor for the best companies in the world and to use a portion of all the money that we make to provide computers for kids and families who don't have access to technology. And from that point on, it's been, kind of slow but steady growth. We're $1 million company with like 20 employees and, a large warehouse. So we're kind of perfecting that, sort of internal algorithm on how do you have this that you can scale. Because if you look at it, we are throwing away like 300,000 computers every day. Every day,
Wow.
we're discarding 300, 250,000 computers. But we have about 30 million kids in the United States who don't have access to a computer at home. So
Mm,
those numbers do not make any sense at all. So how can you become a competitive country when your youth doesn't have access to something as basic as a computer to be able to do homework?
mm,
So yeah, that's kind of, that's kind of
mm.
our story.
So amazing. I love when it's almost like you didn't, the business came to you in a way. You had part of it, and then just by being in the right place at the right time, having that conversation, being open-minded, all of a sudden you have this amazing opportunity that just kind of transforms so many different people's lives. It's incredible. I just absolutely love stories like that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much. I do feel like timing, in every sense of the word, was key. It always is.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
boil down into what would make or break a company. Timing is a very important factor. And it wasn't necessarily timing only about the actual business model, but timing in the community that we're in. I mean, we've
Mm,
seen, like, I think that we've grown with Tampa Bay. I consider ourselves a Tampa Bay success story because I don't know that we would have had the same level of success if we would have been in another community.
mm, hmm.
All the folks here, from a government standpoint to local, organizations, they just have been completely amazing with us and supportive. And, it's just like this, foreign kid that had this idea, and, sure, why not? Let's make it happen. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm proud of that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you share that because I have a friend I was speaking to recently who he's of Colombian descent. He's first generation and grew up in Chicago, and sharing about how, when he was a kid, he never envisioned having the opportunities and the acceptance and just the welcoming atmosphere that he has in the business world now. And I don't know, I like to believe that it is nationally, or if it is just the Tampa Bay area, but I love that, so many people from so many different backgrounds and places are just welcomed with open arms in the business community here. And I truly, I don't necessarily fit a profile of an immigrant, but I love seeing so many of my friends that are, and their success stories. It's amazing what one generation can do, I think, given the opportunity and the motivation.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a firm believer of that saying that we're only like one generation away.
Mm,
um, and you might not necessarily fit the migrant model, but I mean, you're an entrepreneur, so you are able to go into that community and experience that, firsthand. And then you realize that, most of the people are completely open-minded, they're willing to
yeah,
help. They're not shut down. They don't have, or at least here, they don't have that mentality of, it's me and it's only me that I'm gonna win. No, it's just like we're in this, treadmill. Let's just, hop on it and then, keep pushing
yeah,
forward. Because if we thrive as a community, it's going to help all of us. It's going to help our kids. It's going to help our schools. It's going to help our neighborhoods. It's going to help our professionals. It's going to help at every single stage. And
hmm,
I think a lot of people understand that here.
yeah. I agree. It's so refreshing. Just a great community to be a part of.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
is there any hard lessons you learned along the way aside from the stock market crashing, which are things outside of our control?
Yeah, a ton. There's just, I think one of the um probably the two hardest lessons that I've learned in my relatively short journey is that, there are parts in your growth that you're going to feel stuck, right? You're going to feel like something's not working. And those periods of time can be pretty lengthy. And you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt, is this going to work? Do people even care? Is this going to make any money? Am I wasting my life and my time doing this? because no matter how passionate you are eventually, after sustained periods of not quote unquote being successful, you are going to start to doubt yourself. It's just human nature. And then you might make the mistake of trying to do things that are not truly who you are. And I know that happened to me around 2016, 2017. I kind of shifted of my, center of my, purpose,
Hmm.
and started trying random things that ended up costing me a lot of money. They costing me a lot personally, and I mean, it almost took us bankrupt for sure. So that was a hard lesson learned for sure. Like, stick to what you know, figure out what you really are passionate about, and just like, don't deviate from that. Pivot,
Hmm.
absolutely, pivot as many times as you have to or want to. Don't feel like, if you're committed to this, you have to pursue it at all costs. Pivot, but make sure that the pivot stays true to really who you are and what you stand for. And then the other part is that you really have to enjoy just the journey, because it's not about the destination. It's about enjoying every single step of your growth, because every step of your growth has different sets of goods and bads, and you have to take both of them, right? But once it's like a baby, once you enjoy your 3-year-old stage, it has crappy periods, but it also has joyful periods. But once it's gone, it's gone.
Hmm.
So same with your business, right? Just like enjoy every stage, and as you keep growing, it's just going to evolve. It doesn't get any easier. It does not get any easier. It just gets different, right? But it's all about enjoying your journey, not about the goal or the destination. It's just really enjoying how you are evolving to get there.
Wow. So I've heard that said before, but never so eloquently. I absolutely love the
Thank you.
comparison to a child. It makes the picture so clear. I love that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And to your the challenge of staying true, I mean, I'm just in the baby stages of my company, and already, there's so many directions that I can go with different things. And I can really see how easy it is to go down different paths and play with different ideas and maybe lose focus. So that's definitely a good reminder, and something that I'll have to just keep at my core, I think, is what is my purpose? Why am I here? What is the ultimate goal? And do the decisions that I'm making align with it? Because there's more opportunity than time in the day, I think. And so staying focused on the right path is
Yeah.
going to be key to make sure staying successful.
Yeah. There's this one motivational speaker. I really like old school motivational speakers.
Okay.
Like, Jim Ron and Brian Tracy and like those guys. Because if you look at the newer breed of motivational speakers, they are basically that info, but sort of, recycling with their own kind of spin. So there's one guy, and I'm pretty sure it's Brian Tracy that says this, and it's like, it's not about becoming that image of successful. It's not about being a millionaire. A lot of people are so obsessed with like becoming a millionaire or something like that. The true joy comes in the person that you need to become in order to be that, that
Mm,
millionaire, that successful. You're
yeah.
looking at that person that built this massive company, and really the thing that you need to crave is not that massive company. It's your personal journey in order to get to that point, because you need to evolve as a person in order to keep growing, to grow to that level.
Ooh,
uh,
beautiful.
it's just that it doesn't happen, by like this. You give that side of the company to someone who's not prepared, and they're just gonna wreck it.
Right.
So yeah, I've been I struggle with it, but I try to internalize it for sure.
Love that. So cool. So now that I mean, you're coming on 10 years now, not too far off. So
Well,
would you
10
say
years
you're
10 years in the community, about 6 years with the business. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what's your greatest challenge that you're facing in this time?
Well, this time is definitely preparing for growth.
Mm,
Like as entrepreneurs, we all have, we all lean towards certain profiles, right? There's this great book that's called, it's Heart, Guts, Smart, and it's Heart, Gut, Smart, and there's another one. And it kind of fits that, are you a heart driven entrepreneur? You're a smart driven entrepreneur, gut driven
oh,
entrepreneur.
okay.
Um, and I've always been a gut driven entrepreneur. I'm definitely not the smartest one in the room for sure. And also kind of a heart driven. So you like I've never been a process person. I've never been a process oriented, structured person.
Okay.
But
More
then
like go with your gut feeling type.
right. So
Okay.
like, let's all work together. And I mean, go to the warehouse. Come on, guys, let's tackle this project. Let's work together. But then you realize that at a certain stage of your growth, you need to have processes and very
Mm,
clear processes in place because you start bringing people to the team. And if they don't know exactly what they need to do, then they don't get it done. And if they don't get it done, it's not their fault. It's your fault as a leader, right? Because you're not providing the right instruction.
mm,
So, I've become a more process oriented person. So we're in that stage right now, and it's been very, very challenging. If you look at our warehouse now and you look at it a year ago, it's from night to day, right? Like you go to the warehouse now, everything is in the right place. Every single space has a line, every single place is properly, signalized, and like this is where this goes, this is where the screwdriver goes, this is where the drill goes. And imagine, having that mindset, and you become a little anal, but it comes with that growth process. So that's been very challenging to us because then you realize, all right, if you don't get this done the right way, now you are at a size where if you don't make the right step, it's really, really going to cost you. Like
yeah.
if you're small, you don't make the right step, that's fine. You can, I mean, okay, you lose a little bit.
Mm,
But where we are, I mean, it a bad decision right now, it can easily take you out of business.
mm.
So we, we're super careful about that. Processes, organization. That's one of our biggest pain points, but ones
Mm.
that we're, dealing
So
with.
what helped you come to that realization? Was it employees or just your observation?
Um, I would I would say just, and again, this is probably my personality. There's people who would say, well, I just looked at my projections on my spreadsheet and this was telling me that like I'm not that person, right? But I'm the type of person that would pay close attention, and I'm like, so how do we keep growing? You
Mm,
know, like how do I go, from here to here, and then from there to there, and then from there to there. And started, getting frustrated. I remember one day, here at like 2 in the morning, you know, cleaning up one of the stations, right? Because it was a mess. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's me and it's 2 in the morning. And why am I doing this? I'm doing it because the person that's in charge of this station doesn't know what they have to do. Not because they're trying to be messy on purpose, it's because they don't know.
mm,
And, that um so imagine that spread out in a lot of different areas of the business. You start to realize, wait a minute, like this is a mess, we're not going to grow. And
mm,
then I start thinking, well, what if someone comes, like what if one of the companies that we want to have as a client visited our warehouse?
mm,
What would they say? Would they be proud of what we have? Would they say these guys have everything? We have the story, we have the purpose, we have the heart, but what about the process? Would they trust us with their inventory? And I'm like, no, there's no way in hell that they would. Like I wouldn't do it. So then that was like the catalyst, right? And every kind of business would have those aha moments in terms of their own respective, industries and processes. So yeah.
Very cool. So basically just taking the time to step back and look at what's happening.
Yeah, and ask yourself, like, where do you want to go? You
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
not a lot of people would want to grow um, to be a Fortune 1000 company. A lot of people would be super happy with just having a lifestyle company. Um, like the friend that we met is like, I just want to travel and have fun. I don't want to become rich doing this. Okay, and that's fair. There's nothing wrong with that. Then you
Hmm.
have to make that decision, right? And
Hmm.
if that's okay with you, then perfect. But if you're like, no, I want to be $100 million company, well, okay, then you gotta figure out then what you need in order to accomplish that,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
and that's it.
Cool. So how can we help support you in your next step of growth?
Well, just become champions of the mission because you never know who is within your circle.
Hmm.
And it's literally a no-brainer to like recycle your computers, your IT equipment with us. um, we offer the same kind of level of service that you would get from an extremely large company because it's all industry standard, but there's not a single company out there that has the ability to measure not only the environmental footprint but the social footprint of what that old computer is doing for kids and families in the community.
Hmm.
So yeah, just become a champion of what we do. And if you hear that anyone, so if you hear anyone that's recycling their computers, obviously send them our way. But if you hear of anyone, any good like organization that's doing amazing things, and access to computers might be a challenge to them, we definitely want to talk to them because kind of the way that we work with a lot of nonprofit partners is that we become their solution. They don't have to pay anything for their computers, but then they also become our champions and spread our mission to their networks. And that's how we get our clients ultimately.
Beautiful. It's so organic and the synergies. I love it. I'm
Thank
so
you.
for your
Awesome.
mission.
Well, I
So
appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
yeah, absolutely. And I'll be sure to have ways to reach out to you in the show notes if that's okay. So if people do have those connections, they can find you easily and make magic happen. Um, and so I just have one final question for you, which I like to ask all my guests.
Okay,
And
shoot.
that is, if you are given a sailboat to sail around the world in, what will
Yes.
you name her?
What would I name that sailboat? Grace, for
Grace.
sure. Yeah, I would name her Grace because I mean, and not only we're here because of the grace of God, but it also reminds me to be grateful. Um, so yeah, that probably would be the name.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Great speaking with you, Tony. As always, I love learning more about your company. I am just amazed at the connections and the growth and the ambition and everything that you're doing in the communities. Such a cool thing. I hope that your story can help inspire other people. And I do hope that you get some context from this conversation as well. And hopefully, we both continue to grow.
Awesome. Well, I'm super happy about you and what you have going on. And yes, I look forward to staying in touch for sure.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to share and follow so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes.